He rented me a room without asking any questions, without emotion, without expectations. But every morning I found my favorite cup of coffee in the kitchen. At that time, I didn't know that his silence wasn't calmness, but pain that he had learned to hide, and that I myself had come to this house not just to find a roof over my head. I was looking for a heart that wasn't afraid to be alive. After my ex said, "You deserve something more stable," he moved out, taking half the furniture and all the plans. A week later, the bookstore I worked at closed down. No warning, just locked doors and a sign that said, "Sorry." I had 2 weeks left in the apartment and maybe 3 left in my bank account. I found the ad on a Tuesday night, blurry-eyed, hungry, scrolling Craigslist like it could solve grief. The price was suspiciously low. No pictures except for a faded 2-story house with ivy climbing up one side. It didn't matter. I emailed anyway. He responded within the hour. "Rooms available. You can come by at 7. Alex." That was it. No greeting, no smiley face. Just blunt sentences that somehow felt more honest than anything my ex had said in months. I arrived early, more nervous than I wanted to admit. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you whisper out of instinct. Before I could knock twice, the door opened. He stood there, maybe late 30s, maybe older, unreadable. His eyes met mine without hesitation. "You're here about the room?" "Yeah, I'm Jake." He nodded once, then stepped aside. "Come in." That was it. No handshake, no small talk. The tour lasted 3 minutes. Hallway, kitchen, stairs, second door on the right. The room was clean. The walls were bare. There was a bed and a radiator that hissed like it had opinions. He said the rent was $600, cash preferred. No smoking, no parties. Quiet after 10. "I can pay the first month today," I offered too quickly. He glanced at me. "You working?" "I was. Lost the job last week." He studied me like he was deciding something. "Still want the room?" "Yes." That was all it took. He pulled a slip of paper from the drawer, a handwritten lease. We signed it without sitting down. I moved in that same night. My boxes barely filled a corner. I didn't ask him questions. He didn't ask me why my hands shook when I unpacked. We barely spoke. That first night, I lay awake for hours listening. The house had noises, creaks, distant hums, the occasional clink of a glass from the kitchen. But what kept me awake was the music. At 11:06 exactly, soft vinyl crackle. A slow jazz record played somewhere downstairs. Sad, almost sweet. I lay there, eyes open, listening to notes that felt like memories someone else forgot to bury. I wanted to hate how comforting it was, but it was the first time in days I didn't feel like I was disappearing. The next morning I found a mug of coffee waiting near the stove. No note, no explanation. I didn't ask. Days fell into a routine. He woke before me. I came downstairs pretending I didn't notice the second mug already poured. I cooked dinner some nights, not asking if he'd eat. Sometimes he did. Mostly he just sat nearby with a book, listening. We lived like strangers, pretending not to be. But he noticed things. When my faucet dripped, it was fixed by the next day. When I left my hoodie on a chair, it was folded on my bed that night. Still, he never smiled. Not really. And he never touched the door at the end of the hall. His room. Always closed. Always quiet. One night, the heater in my room failed. I woke up shaking, breath visible in the dark. The radiator gave one last hiss, then silence. I sat up, wrapped in every blanket I had. I thought about texting him, but I didn't even know if he'd care. He'd never offered more than quiet kindness. Maybe that was all he had. I walked downstairs barefoot. The floor was freezing. The kitchen light was on. He stood by the counter, sleeves rolled up, warming his hands around a mug. "You cold?" he asked, like I'd said it out loud. "My heater's dead," I admitted. He didn't hesitate. "Come sleep downstairs." I blinked. "What?" "My bed's big and warm." "That's not... you don't have to..." He looked at me for the first time that night. Really looked. I wouldn't offer if I didn't mean it. So I followed him. His room was simple. No clutter. The only thing that surprised me was the photo frame turned face down on the nightstand. He pulled back the blanket and gestured. "Left side." I climbed in, careful not to breathe too loud. The sheets were warm. He lay down on the other side and switched off the light. The silence returned. But this time it wasn't empty. It held something I couldn't name. 10 minutes passed before either of us spoke. "Do you ever miss it?" I whispered. His voice was soft, almost asleep. "Miss what?" "Having someone next to you." The pause was longer this time. Then, "Every night." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That night I slept deeper than I had in weeks. Not because I felt safe, but because someone else was choosing not to be alone. The next morning when I woke up, the bed was still warm beside me. He was gone, but on the pillow where his head had been, a note. "The heater's fixed, but if you ever get cold again, don't wait to be invited." The morning after I shared his bed, nothing looked different, but everything felt off by an inch. He was already in the kitchen when I came down, dressed, composed, the same mug in his hand. The coffee was made. The silence was waiting. His nod was brief. "Heater should be fine now." I nodded back. "Yeah, I saw the note. Thanks." That was it. No mention of the night. No, "Did you sleep okay?" No accidental glance across the counter. He washed his mug, left for work, and I stood there staring at the spot where he'd stood like it might explain something. I spent the whole day pretending it hadn't meant anything, that I hadn't slept deeper in his bed than I had in my own in months, that I hadn't woken up missing the weight of someone just being there. But by evening, I couldn't pretend anymore. He came home late, no explanation, just a wet jacket and tired eyes. I offered dinner. He declined, said he wasn't hungry. I cooked anyway. Left a plate out, then went back upstairs and stared at the ceiling until I heard him heat it up at midnight. That's how it went for a week. Careful words, no touching, no mention of warmth or what it meant, like we'd hit some invisible line and neither of us wanted to admit we'd crossed it. But everything between us had changed. The silences were heavier now, not avoidance, tension. I caught him watching me sometimes when he thought I wasn't looking. His eyes lingered, then flicked away fast, like guilt or memory. Once our hands brushed while reaching for the same glass. Just skin. Just a second. But it felt like something cracked. Neither of us said a word. Another night, he found me crying. I hadn't meant to. It wasn't a breakdown, just one of those late-night moments where everything hit too hard. Another job rejection, the fifth one that week. My fingers trembled on the laptop as I read the email. Polite disappointment again. "We appreciate your interest." It felt like the world was closing 100 doors I hadn't even knocked on. He came in while I was still sitting at the table, eyes wet, screen glowing. "You okay?" I wiped my face fast. Useless. "Yeah, just stupid job stuff." He didn't speak, just stood there, watching. Then he sat down next to me like it was the most natural thing in the world, and he didn't try to fix it. He just placed a hand on my shoulder. Firm, present, the kind of touch that doesn't ask for anything back. I nearly broke. The quiet was louder than crying. I couldn't meet his eyes, could barely breathe. Finally, he said, "You're allowed to fall apart. Doesn't mean you won't come back together." I laughed once, dry. "What if I don't?" "Then I'll hold the pieces until you do." His voice was low, honest. It was the first time I realized how alone he must have been for years. The way he said things, like someone who hadn't spoken that truth out loud before. My heart hammered. I wanted to say something, anything, that I felt it too, that I thought about him more than I should, that sharing his bed had changed something I didn't know how to name, but I said nothing. He stood after a while. His hand lingered on my shoulder half a second too long before it fell away. "Eat something," he said softly. "You'll think clearer after." He left before I could thank him. After that, we drifted closer. Not quickly, not loudly, but there were signs. He started leaving small things again. Toast already buttered, coffee poured, a blanket on the couch when the house got too cold. I started cooking more, fixing things, staying in the kitchen longer than necessary just to hear his footsteps nearby. Still, we never talked about it. Whatever it was, we didn't label it, didn't ask for more. But some nights I'd find myself at his door, just staring, wondering if he was thinking of me too. Once I passed by and saw the light on. He was reading, alone, quiet. He didn't see me, but the look on his face said everything I needed to know. He wasn't as closed off as he wanted to be. He just didn't know how to open the door without being left behind again. And I was afraid to knock, afraid that once I did, there'd be no going back. So we sat in the middle, between silence and something more. That night I stood at his door again, my hand raised to knock. I didn't, but the light under the door flickered, and I heard him say quietly, "You don't always have to ask, Jake." And I froze, because I hadn't made a sound. I didn't knock that night. I didn't even touch the door. But somehow he still heard me. "You don't always have to ask, Jake." His voice was quiet, a permission I hadn't earned, but needed more than I wanted to admit. I stood there, heartbeat louder than sense, frozen in the hallway like a kid trying not to get caught needing something. I almost walked away, but instead I opened the door. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, still fully dressed, hands resting on his knees like he'd been waiting. He didn't smile, didn't speak again. Just watched me take one slow step into the room. "I wasn't going to come in," I said. "I know. I just needed to know if I could." He nodded once. "You can." I stood there too long, unsure of what I expected. A hug, a breakdown, some clear answer about what we were. Instead, he just moved over, making space beside him. We sat in silence, the kind that's thick with everything unsaid. I looked at the floor. He looked straight ahead. Finally, he asked, "What are we doing?" I flinched. "I don't know." His voice stayed even. "Feels like we're both waiting for the other to name it." I swallowed hard. "I don't want to ruin anything." "You're not." "But I don't know what this is, Alex." He exhaled. "It's not nothing." That landed heavy. We lived in this fragile rhythm for weeks. Careful gestures, silent meals, unspoken warmth. But this, finally saying it out loud, cracked the surface. "I didn't plan for this," I admitted. "Me either." He turned to face me. "But I haven't wanted someone to stay in a long time, and you make it harder to pretend I'm fine alone." The air shifted. Something deeper moved between us. Less like desire, more like recognition. Then just when it felt like we might stop pretending altogether, the front door opened. Voices. Not one, two. Alex stood up fast. His body changed. Stiff, alert, like a reflex. He left the room without a word. I followed seconds later. There was a man in the living room, mid-30s, confident, too familiar. He dropped his bag on the floor like he'd been here 100 times. "Didn't think I'd still have the key," the man said casually. Alex didn't respond. He looked tired, tense, cornered. I stayed in the shadow of the hallway watching. The man noticed me after a beat. "Oh, so you've got company now?" Alex's jaw clenched. "What do you want, Ryan?" The name landed like a warning. Ryan smirked. "You stopped answering my texts. Thought I'd check in." "You gave up the right to check in when you left." "Didn't stop you from playing our records." Alex didn't deny it. My chest tightened. Ryan looked at me again. "Is this why you stopped calling? Is he the replacement?" I stepped forward. "I'm not a replacement." He looked amused. Didn't realize he took in strays now. "Ryan." Alex's voice dropped, sharp. Ryan raised his hands, mock surrender. "Relax. Just stopping by." Then just as casually, he dropped the words that cracked something open. "You used to say you'd never let someone in again." Alex didn't answer. He stood still, breathing hard. "You always were good at pretending," Ryan added. "Guess some things don't change." He turned, walking toward the door like he hadn't just ripped open a wound. Before he left, he paused. "Hope this one knows what he's getting into." The door closed. Silence followed. I didn't know what to say. Alex didn't move. After a long pause, he said quietly, "He was my husband." I froze. He kept staring at the floor. "We were married for 4 years. He left 2 winters ago. Took the dog, the records, half the books." I kept the silence. It hit too hard, not because of jealousy, but because now I understood the walls, the rules, the weight he carried in every word he didn't say. "I didn't mean to bring this into your space," I said. "You didn't," he said quickly. "He did. I'm not trying to fix you, Alex. I know. But I don't want to be a ghost in your house." He finally looked at me. "You're not. You're the only thing that makes it feel like home again." His voice cracked on the word home. That broke me more than anything else he could have said. I need a second, he said softly. I nodded. I gave it to him, not out of fear, but because sometimes silence is the right answer, if it's given, not forced. I went upstairs, closed the door, and sat on the edge of my bed, heart racing. I'd thought the hardest part would be admitting what I felt, but maybe it was learning that love comes with ghosts and still choosing to stay. Hours later, I found him sitting on the porch, staring at the street like it might offer a way forward. I sat beside him without asking. He said, "You still here?" I said, "Yeah, and I'm not leaving unless you make me." He didn't answer, but he reached for my hand and didn't let go. Elias didn't come to the bar the next day, or the day after that. Tyler told himself it didn't matter, told himself it was better this way, told himself Elias had probably gone back to his old life, to his perfect world where everything made sense. But every night Tyler found himself glancing toward the entrance, waiting, hoping. It was a week later when he saw the familiar figure outside the gym, pacing. Elias didn't come in, just stood near the edge of the lot, head down, like he was fighting himself. Tyler watched from the window, arms crossed, until Elias finally turned and left. That night, Elias texted him for the first time in days. "I'm sorry." That was it. No follow-up, no explanation, just that. Tyler stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. He could have let it go. He should have. But instead he typed back, "Meet me tomorrow, midnight, my rooftop." The rooftop was their middle ground. Not too close, not too exposed, just high enough to pretend the world below didn't exist. When Elias showed up, he looked different. Not physically, no new scars or changes, just something in the way he moved, slower, like something had been taken out of him and hadn't come back yet. Tyler sat on the ledge, legs dangling, staring out at the city lights. He didn't look at Elias when he spoke. "Why'd you ghost me?" Elias took a breath. "I didn't know how to come back after what I said. I panicked. I thought I could just bury it. Pretend it didn't happen." "You think I'm something you can bury?" Tyler's voice cut sharp. "No," Elias said quickly. "I think I'm the one who buried himself." That made Tyler turn. Elias looked raw, honest in a way he hadn't been before. There was no performance now, no charm, just a boy who looked like he'd been running from himself and finally ran out of road. "I told Olivia about you," Elias said quietly. Tyler's heart stopped. Elias went on. "I didn't tell her everything. Just that I met someone, that it felt different, that I wasn't sure who I was anymore. And she cried," Elias said. "Then she got quiet. And then she told me. She already knew. She just didn't want to admit it." Tyler leaned back against the ledge, trying to process it. "She knew. She said, I'd always looked happiest when I didn't think anyone was watching, and that I never looked that way around her." Tyler swallowed hard. Elias laughed once, bitter. "She said I should figure it out before I ruined 3 lives instead of just 2. There was silence. "Why are you telling me this?" Tyler asked. "Because I don't want to keep pretending, and because you're the only person I've ever been honest with, even when I was trying not to be." Tyler looked at him for a long time. "You think saying all this fixes what you did?" "No," Elias said. "I think it's the only thing I can offer." Tyler stood, walked to the edge of the rooftop. The wind felt colder tonight. "I don't want to be your mistake," he said. "I'm not a phase. I'm not a crash course in figuring your life out." "I know," Elias said, stepping beside him. "You're the only thing that's ever made sense." Tyler looked at him. "Then why do I still feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop?" Elias didn't answer. Tyler turned away, pacing. "You left. You always leave. You say you're scared, and I get it. But fear doesn't excuse everything. I'm scared too. But I still showed up." "I know," Elias said softly. "And now you want back in. You want me to believe you've changed in 1 week." "No," Elias said. "I want you to know that I'm willing to start." Tyler froze. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a plea. It was just quiet resolve. Elias stepped closer. "I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm asking if you'll let me try." Tyler closed his eyes. There was a war inside him. Rage, longing, fear. And underneath it all, that damn spark that hadn't died. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said without looking at Elias, "You screw me over again, and I'll vanish. For good." "I won't. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow too." Tyler glanced at him. "Then start proving it." Elias nodded, and for the first time didn't reach for Tyler. He just stood beside him, letting silence be enough. That night they didn't kiss. They didn't touch. But when Elias left, he looked back. And Tyler, for the first time in days, didn't feel like he was waiting alone. I didn't recognize the man who showed up at my door that Sunday morning. He was soaked in regret, standing like someone who'd run out of ways to hide. No umbrella, no coat, just raw nerves and a trembling voice that couldn't quite get the words out. "I saw the video," he finally said. "I shouldn't have waited this long." I stood still, my fingers curled around the edge of the door, not opening it wider, not shutting it either. I'd rehearsed this moment 100 times, what I'd say if he came back, how I'd keep my pride intact. But the truth was messier than rehearsals. "You didn't just wait," I said. "You disappeared." He nodded slowly. "I thought I was protecting myself." I looked him dead in the eye. And who was protecting me? There it was, the silence that finally stripped us bare. He stepped back. "Can we talk? Not like this. Somewhere quieter." I didn't agree, but I didn't shut the door either. We ended up on the bench by the train station, the same place we used to sit when we were teenagers, trying to dream bigger than our town would let us. That time, I let him speak first. "My dad found your name in my text the week after prom. Said I was lucky no one else knew. He told me to end it. Said if I didn't, I'd lose everything." "So you chose not to lose everything," I said. "Except me." His jaw tightened. "No, I didn't choose. I froze. I was 17 and terrified. And every day after that, I wanted to undo it, but I didn't know how." "You didn't want to know how," I shot back, "because it was easier to let me rot in silence than admit you broke me." He flinched but didn't deny it. I wasn't looking for an apology. I was looking for something real, something that made the pain worth remembering. "You know what the worst part was?" I said. "You were the only person I trusted to see all of me. And when you ran, you didn't just leave. You erased me." He nodded, eyes glassy. "I know." A beat passed, then another. "I watched your speech," he said quietly. "I kept thinking, if I had said one word, one sentence, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe we'd be somewhere else. Better. But we're not," I said. "We're here." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time, not just as someone he loved, but someone he'd failed. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, "but I'm not gonna vanish again. Even if you hate me, I want to be here. If you ever need me." It wasn't the grand confession I used to fantasize about, but maybe it didn't need to be. Maybe real closure wasn't about perfect lines. It was about unfinished people finally being honest. I stood up. "I don't need you to be here for me. I needed you to be here for yourself." He nodded slowly. "I'm trying." I walked away without saying goodbye, not because I was angry, but because I didn't need anything more. He'd already given me the one thing he never could before, the truth. A year later, I saw him again, this time at Pride. He wasn't hiding in the crowd or keeping his distance. He was walking, marching even, holding hands with someone new. Not me, but someone. He saw me across the street. Our eyes met. He didn't come over. He didn't wave. He just smiled, like he knew we'd made peace, and it was enough. And it was. Because healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant remembering without bleeding. It meant choosing not to disappear from yourself. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt free.